In a distant land where the skies shimmered like silk and the trees whispered stories to anyone who would listen, there stood a village unlike any other. It was called Elder Glen, nestled at the edge of the forest of forgotten things. The villagers there lived peacefully, but they were not without trials. They were tasked with building a place called Lightspire, a hidden city of unity and love where truth could shine and all people could gather as one. But building Lightspire was no ordinary task. It was a spiritual endeavor, one that required more than tools and timber. It needed hearts full of love, minds eager to obey, and souls willing to forgive. Each villager had received a tiny golden lantern when the call to build Lightspire first came. The lanterns glowed only when the bearer acted with a willing heart. Some lanterns burned brightly, others flickered, and some, dimmed by pride or bitterness, glowed no more. At the heart of this story is a girl named Tessa, a curious, courageous child of about 12 winters. She had eyes the color of storm-washed stone and a braid that trailed behind her like a comet's tail. Tessa was known for asking questions, sometimes too many. Why can't we just use magic to build Lightspire? She had once asked the High Keeper, and the High Keeper had smiled gently and replied, "Because Lightspire is not made from stone. It is made from sacrifice, from patience, and from choosing love when you would rather choose revenge." That answer puzzled Tessa, but her heart was willing, and so her lantern glowed. One day, as Midsummer's Eve neared and fireflies danced in the glades, a troubling silence fell over Elder Glen. Lanterns that once glowed in unison began to dim. Quarrels arose over things as simple as bread and as serious as betrayal. Old wounds were uncovered. Brothers turned away from each other. Even the elders, those who had been called peacemakers, began to argue. Tessa wandered into the woods, her lantern dimming with each step. She wasn't angry, but she was weary. Weary of trying so hard. Weary of forgiving when it hurt. Weary of well-doing, as the old scriptures said. Sitting beside a mossy stone, she sighed and whispered, "Why must it be so hard to build a place of peace?" Her lantern gave a soft flicker, and then something curious happened. From the underbrush came a rustle, and then a voice, soft, old, and full of both sorrow and wisdom. Because peace is not a place, child. It's a choice. Tessa turned quickly. There, seated across from her, was a creature she had never seen before. It was neither fully man nor beast. It had kind eyes, robes stitched from clouds, and wings that shimmered faintly in the dusk. "Who are you?" she asked. "I am a keeper of forgotten forgiveness," the creature said. "I gather the forgiveness people never offer and the healing they never receive." Tessa blinked. "I didn't know that kind of keeper existed." "Few do," he smiled, "but that does not make the work any less real. Come, walk with me." Together they wandered deeper into the forest. As they walked, the keeper showed her places hidden from mortal eyes. A meadow where grudges had turned into thorns, a pond reflecting broken promises, and then a grove where tiny lights floated, soft and golden. "What are these?" Tessa breathed curiously. "These," the keeper said, "are moments of mercy, offered quietly, chosen bravely." She stepped into the grove, her lantern glowing warmer. The lights seemed to dance around her, each one telling a wordless story of forgiveness given when it was difficult. A mother extending grace to a wayward child, a friend choosing kindness after betrayal, a neighbor offering help despite old hurts. But if people forgave more easily, wouldn't all our lanterns be bright again? Wouldn't light spire rise? The keeper looked solemn. Forgiveness is the key, but it is the hardest gift to give, especially when we feel justified in our pain. Tessa paused. She remembered how her best friend Libby had betrayed her trust last month, how she told Tessa's secret to the others, how Tessa had spoken no word to her since. Her lantern dimmed again. "I haven't forgiven her," Tessa whispered. "I said I didn't care. But I do." The keeper nodded. Pain left unhealed turns into chains, chains that dim even the brightest hearts. He pulled from his robe a scroll and handed it to her. It was glowing faintly. Upon it were words she recognized from the old teachings. "Of you it is required to forgive, for he that forgiveth not has the greater sin." Her breath caught. Those were the words of the Lord himself. And suddenly she understood. Forgiveness wasn't about who was right. It was about who was willing. It was about offering light when darkness felt deserved. She knelt in the grove and prayed, not just for Libby, but for strength to let go. As she prayed, the floating lights began to swirl around her in spirals of warmth. Each one whispered a different name. Someone who had chosen mercy over justice, love over law, grace over grudges. And as she did, her lantern ignited with such warmth it startled the nearby fireflies. The golden glow spread through the grove, illuminating flowers that bloomed only in the presence of the true forgiveness. The keeper smiled. "Well done, child." "But what about the others?" she asked. "What if they won't forgive? What if they won't love?" "Then you forgive first," he said. "Zion is built one heart at a time." He gestured to the glowing flowers around them. Each of these blooms represents someone who chose to forgive first. They didn't wait for apologies. They didn't demand justice. They simply chose love. With that, he vanished into the grove, his voice echoing like wind through leaves. But his words remained written in light upon the air. The willing heart is heaven's key. Tessa returned to the village the next day. Her footsteps felt lighter, her burden less. She found Libby by the stream, skipping stones. But Libby's stones fell heavy into the water, creating no ripples of joy. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the past threatened to swallow her. The hurt, the betrayal, the loneliness of these past weeks. But Tessa reached into her satchel, pulled out her lantern, and held it high. "I forgive you," she said softly. Libby's hands dropped. Her stone plunked into the stream. Tears welled in her eyes like morning dew. "I'm so sorry, Tessa. I was scared and foolish and—" "I know," Tessa interrupted gently, "and I forgive you anyway." As she reached into her cloak, Libby's own lantern, dim for weeks, began to glow again. First a flicker, then a steady warmth, then a radiance that made the stream itself seem to sparkle. That was the beginning, but not the end. For Lightspire was still just a dream. There was much to do, and the trials were far from over. Word came that other villages had abandoned their own efforts to build places of light. Some had fallen to discord, others to discouragement. Many simply gave up when the work grew hard. But then, just when hope seemed fragile, the Lord sent another messenger. Not one with wings, but a humble traveller named Arthur. He appeared at dawn, walking the main road, with nothing but a staff and a pack worn, smooth by many journeys. He bore a scroll, sealed with 7 stars, and spoke of a great work. "You are not called to be perfect," he told the villagers gathered in the square, "only to have hearts full of love and minds that are willing." The villagers murmured among themselves. Perfect they certainly were not, but willing. That was within their reach. Arthur explained that each person would be invited to make a covenant, a sacred promise. Not to be flawless, but to be faithful. Each villager was asked to write one thing they were willing to give up for Lightspire. A pride, a grudge, a fear, a habit. One elderly man wrote, "My need to always be right." A young mother wrote, "My worry that I'm not enough." A merchant wrote, "My love of wealth over people." These scrolls were placed in a sacred chest known as the Ark of Willing Minds. Tessa wrote, "I will give up the lie that my efforts are too small to matter." The ark glowed, and as it did, something miraculous happened. The soil around the village softened. Seeds planted months before, seeds of unity, trust, and obedience, began to grow. Not ordinary plants, but something far more wonderful. Literal blossoms of light opened in the town square. One bloom for each act of forgiveness, another for each willing sacrifice, a third for every prayer offered in faith. Children began to hum hymns they'd never learned. Parents reached across old wounds with trembling hands. Even the elders repented of their stubborn ways. The very air seemed to shimmer with possibility, and as Zion rose, not in stone, but in spirit, the Lord whispered to their hearts, "Be not weary in well-doing, for ye are laying the foundation of a great work." And so they kept going, even when storms came and tested their resolve, even when their lanterns flickered in the darkness of doubt, even when neighboring villages mocked their efforts and called them foolish dreamers. They remembered that small things, like saying sorry, like choosing kindness, like praying when tired, were the bricks of heaven's city. Each morning brought new opportunities to build. A harsh word left unspoken, a helping hand extended to a stranger, a moment of patience when frustration beckoned. These tiny choices made by willing hearts accumulated like drops of rain filling a vast reservoir. One day, as the sun set in hues of rose and amethyst, a mighty wind swept through Elder Glen. But this was no ordinary wind. It carried with it the sound of singing, voices from realms unseen. The wind lifted the golden lanterns into the sky, where they hung like stars, a constellation of willing hearts, a sign to all lands that Zion was no longer a distant hope. It was here, in them. Travelers from far kingdoms would stop and stare at the village where light seemed to dance in the very air. And Tessa, now older and wiser, stood beside Libby, watching their lanterns sway in heavenly dance. She whispered, "We did it." Libby smiled, her own eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. "No," she said, "He did it with our willing hearts." Above them, the lanterns pulsed in rhythm like a cosmic heartbeat, the heartbeat of Zion itself. As you lay your head down tonight, remember, the Lord does not require you to be perfect. He only asks for your heart and a willing mind. When it feels hard to forgive, call upon the Saviour who bore all wounds and still chose mercy. When you grow weary in doing good, know that even the smallest faithful act becomes a seed in Zion's soil. Your kindness, your sacrifice, your effort to love when you'd rather not. These things shine as lanterns in the darkness, so let your light rise. Offer forgiveness where it's needed. Pray to know what you can give to the Lord's great work. And never forget, Zion is not a place on a map. It's a place in your soul, a city built one willing heart at a time. Now, go, rise tomorrow with a fresh mind and renewed strength, and be part of the building of Zion. Let your lantern shine. Let Zion in her beauty rise. Good night.